So we are recording. Great. Welcome to Live Design. Welcome to the CET experience. This is my third year talking at the CET experience, and I'm glad to see you all here with me today. So a little bit about me. That's how we always are told to start our session. So a little bit about me. This is my version of, several truths and a lie. You can try and guess which one is the lie. True or not, one of these statements is false. I may be the only designer you'll meet at CETX who has a bachelor's degree in music with a concentration in music therapy and a minor in psychology. That's a true statement. That is actually a true statement. I have told this story to many of you in the past. I love to kayak, read, sew, and play with my two adorable grandchildren. That is also a true statement. Next one is I've been in the design world since 2005 and had the greatest mentor ever. She's my best friend, and I still go to her with naughty space planning situations. That is also true. It was one of the best relationships I ever had in my life and still have. I grew up in Friendly, Maryland and graduated from Friendly Senior High. True or false?
True.
It is true. It is true. Someone else knows me very well. There is a little tiny town in Maryland called Friendly, and I did go to Friendly Senior High. I live and work in Washington, D.C., and I love the traffic and bustle of our nation's capital. For those of you that missed the sarcasm there, I do like working and living here in D.C., but I do not like driving anywhere. I just don't. There's nothing like being late for a meeting across town and then all of a sudden a motorcade crosses your path and you're stuck there for even another 10 minutes. Live design is the greatest time saver and gets the message across to the customer efficiently, but I will admit to occasionally breaking out the bumwad and sketching by hand. And that is true. Every once in a while, there's just nothing like having a piece of paper and a pencil in your hand to try and figure out what it is you want to do. So today we are going to talk a little bit about prepping for live design, what you do to get ready for the session. We're going to find out our cast of characters, the dealer designer, the client, and the designer from the A&D firm. We're going to design one 6-pack together. And what's your role in all of this is you can stop this at any time. It's like in football, they call it calling an audible. And you get to yell out anytime and say, why did you say that? Or how did you get there? Or I dealt with this the same way. And this is what I said, because this is an interactive learning session. It's just as much me as it is you. I'm going to learn something from you. You're going to learn something from me. Hopefully, what you'll get out of this is kind of a new perspective on interacting with clients. You know how to design. You're here because you are a designer. The design part is not the part that's scary or foreign or gives you pause. It's the fact that now we are being put face first in front of clients in a way that we never were before. Normally, our salesperson went to a meeting, they came back with the plan, you put the plan into parts and pieces, you may have never spoken to a client. And I would say that 7 years ago, when I started out in dealer designership, that was it. I very rarely spoke to a customer because there was always the A&D firm in between me and the customer, and our salesperson worked with the A&D firm. Now I am face front right there in front of the customer all the time, and it is the first couple times were super scary. So we're going to give you a new perspective on interacting with clients, maybe some stock phrases to fall back on when something else horrible happens, and how to educate your customer without damaging the relationship between your dealership and your A&D firm. Horrible things do happen during live design. I will share one with you. Not even quite a year ago, we did a bid. We won the bid. As usual, the A&D firm was behind on the bid. The bid came out late. The questions came back late. They awarded the bid late. And according to the schedule that came out with the bid, from the day we were awarded the bid till the day the first order was supposed to go in was 2 weeks. 2 weeks. Okay, we're going to jump right into this. We're going to live design. We're going to get this knocked out. I put all the typicals in the plan, stayed up late one night to do it. Get in there with the meeting with the customer the next day. We go to live design. I show them the plan and the customer says, I've never seen these typicals before. I literally choked. I could think of several things to say, including what you weren't involved in the bid process and what kind of jokers did you hire? There were a lot of things that came to my mind to say, but you can't say those things during the live design process. And thankfully, someone else in the meeting, and I have to give him credit for this, came up with, well, let's just use these as a jumping off spot. Okay, these were what was in the bid, but we'll use these as a jumping off spot. Great. Whew. Okay, move on now. But that one I literally choked on. I could not figure out what to say at all. So prepping for live design. This is the technical part of this. You want to strip down your CET file as much as you can. You want to freeze any items that are closed. If a decision is already made on a space, you can actually group it and freeze it, and it will kind of show up just as a little gray blob on the 3D. You want to make sure your CAD file is clean. If you don't know the words audit, purge, and overkill, you should know them, or better than that, you should go attend Michael Beal's session. Michael Beal is our CAD trainer guy. He's been at every CET conference. Many of you have had him at your dealership, and he talks all about cleaning up that CAD file to make sure that it doesn't interfere when it's XREF'd into your CET plan. You want to have 2 or 3 versions of what you're going to talk about off to the side so you can just pull them in. Some people use alternates. I find that alternates can bog down a drawing just a little bit, so I just keep them off to the side and drag them over. I may block them and drag them over, but I stay away from alternates. They're not my favorite. Other people use them super well, and God love all of you. Start with a neutral color palette. You don't want someone saying, I hate that chair because it's purple, when you know darn well it comes in 3,000 colors anyway. Do your homework in advance. Know a little bit about the budget of what you're working with. Know a little bit about the programming. Sometimes you get that information from the A&D firm ahead of time, and sometimes you don't. Sometimes it's in the bid documents. Sometimes it's not. Maybe try and have a side conversation ahead of time so you know which way things are going. You want to turn off your distractions, turn off your Outlook, use an out of office reply. And if you can, use multiple screens so that you can see the people to whom you're speaking on one screen and your plan on the other one. Another good thing to do is to state the goals in the invitation and at the beginning of the meeting. If you set the script ahead of time, you lessen the chance of people wandering off on their own path. So here's a typical meeting invitation. Dear X and so, in this meeting, we'll be focusing on developing the workstations. Okay, so right now I've set the stage. We're talking about the workstations. We aren't talking about the cafeteria. We aren't talking about the conference room. We aren't talking about anything else. We are talking about the workstations. We'll be looking at the kinds of tasks the people who occupy these stations or these spaces undertake. Okay, so what do these people do? We've all heard it 1,000 times, form follows function. And what kinds of furniture best supports these tasks? Live design is an interactive process, and I'm looking forward to hearing your ideas and comments about these stations. Some form of this email goes out with my invitation. But this is what we're going to be doing today. So we've set it up. We're looking at developing the workstations. We're not talking about what color the chairs are in the reception place. We're not talking about whether the stools in the cafeteria have backs or not. This is a big thing. We're going to be talking about workstations. So our cast of characters, we have the dealer designer is me. Our client, who is going to be represented today by Maury. You can see him on your screen. It's a lobbying firm of about 30 people, but they're growing fast. They expect to double within 18 months. The CEO's executive assistant is supervising the move and the purchase of new furniture. And we have all dealt with this before. Someone in the office has been put in charge of this, and they know absolutely nothing about furniture. And we have to educate them, but we also have to not piss off, or pardon my language, the A&D firm. They need to be out of their current space by January 31st. The new space is going to be ready on January 1st, and our order date is November 1st for order placement. That means the day we place the order. So we're looking at getting proposals to the customer mid-October. So obviously we're down to the wire here on this. We have to get these stations figured out today. And our A&D designer, who is played by Karen, is from a leading national design firm. And we'll see how she goes with that, because we've all had our moments with our leading national design firms who have been on our projects. And there are times that we want to look at them and go, has anybody ever taught you about furniture? But you can't say that when you're talking to them. You can't say that. So hopefully she's going to play her role well, and hopefully she's not going to stick it to me too bad. So let's go live as if this were the session. So I'd like to welcome you today to our live design session. As we said during the bid interview, my job is to turn your space plan into actual orderable parts and pieces. What you're going to do, how many widgets you get, how many this you get, how many that you get. I'm the one that kind of makes sure that your vision comes to life. So we're just going to dive right in here. We've done a couple of these before together where we worked out the middle of the space here with your kind of reservable private offices, but they're not supposed to be permanent private offices. They're if you need to go in and have a day or a half a day to yourself, you can do that. Our phone rooms on the end we worked out, and those are not reservable. They are there for, oops, I got a call, I got to duck in. So today we're going to focus on the workstations. The red lines you see here is what's called the block plan that your A&D firm provided to you. And this shows how many stations could possibly fit. So we have 5 blocks of 8 and 3 blocks of 8. So we have 64 possible spots showing. Right now you have about 30 people, but you know you want to grow. So what I did was I put in what we call a 6-pack. 6 stations all together. They can grow out if you have more people coming, or they can stay the way they are if you don't have more people coming. And
But
we,
excuse me.
yeah,
So I appreciate this effort and everything, but I'm really concerned about the lack of line um, that this creates in the space. I think that the line is very, very important to what we're trying to achieve in this space. We're really focused on the modality and the modularity and the flexibility of the space, but we cannot lose the line. I think that's just really important.
I think that's a great statement. Just to clarify everybody here that these are actually 6 different interpretations of what the 6-pack could look like, and we're probably going to settle on one today, which is going to give us that great line across and give that sort of uniformity to the space, so that when you walk through the space there aren't any kind of things that draw your eye or pull your eye away from this kind of cohesive look. Maury, what do you think about
Well,
that?
I understand that, but I'm concerned about these stations that are along the window. They're going to be more prestigious, and shouldn't they be different?
You can do that, of course, you can do that. What I think one of the things, yeah, they're going to be more prestigious. We had talked about earlier that these stations would be more for people who are here on a standard basis, your accountants and more of your back of the house people who are there on a day basis, and people who come in and just touch down because the rest of the time they're off on the hill, or they're managing clients, or they're going to customer events, and they really just need a place to touch down for the day. They would kind of sort of be back here. And we can do a uniform look all the way across all of these stations, or we can do something different here, but keep the kind of the same theme here. Like maybe these stations have more storage, and these stations use the same kind of furniture, but have less storage. So we have that
Well,
uniformity of look.
I really think that the modularity and the modal working spaces, the flexibility means that we need to be as similar as possible with all these stations, because as you're growing, eventually you're going to have full-time people over there, and it's just really important to keep all these pieces as similar as possible, and also for a uniform look.
Well,
That's a
I understand that. I'm just saying that there are people who we would perhaps want to assign to the windows who are going to have a higher status in the organization, and maybe that should be reflected.
Well, I think you still want the stations as similar as possible. Don't forget that we're trying to keep this very open, and so there will be a lot of light transfer. All of the stations on that side of the plan are definitely going to be light filled.
That's true. You're kind of in the middle of the building, so you have this one long line of windows to work with. There are other people on the other side of the building over here. I've kind of clipped them out of the plan a little bit, and we can look at the whole building plan at some point possibly, but just to make it easier for you to focus on where your space is. One of the great things about all of these kinds of brands of furniture, these different systems furniture that I'm showing to you, is that they all can achieve a uniform look with just maybe something different underneath, such as, let's focus in on the first one. This first kind of brand that I've selected for you has what is called a panel system, and that panel is basically a glorified extension cord. It helps bring power and data from the wall over here all the way out here to the furthest person in the station. And I say extension cord, but it's really much more complicated than that. The wires are wired into the building system. It's a very safe electrical plan and things like that. But really what this does is serves to bring power from one place all the way out to the next space, as well as providing what we call space delineation. This is my space. This is your space. So this first one that I'm showing you is called Canvas Channel. And it's extraordinarily flexible because this row of panels stands up all by itself, meaning you could start out now with everybody facing each other, but maybe 6 months from now, you want everybody facing out front. And it's very easy to do that without having a lot of installers in your space or taking things apart. We just simply turn the components. This component is the same as this desk. We just added a screen to it. This credenza is the same as this credenza. We just turned it around. Because this panel line is freestanding, we have a lot of flexibility. We can add a gallery panel. We can do a lot of things with this. Maury, what are your comments
So
on
that's really
this kind of
nice.
system?
I kind of like that. Can we sort of mix and match like you're showing there, where some are facing one way and some are facing the other?
You can do that. I have generally found that in terms of the person sitting here, when the other person is facing forward, unless they interact with each other a lot, there's usually a lot of, I don't want him to see what I'm doing here,
Well, yeah,
or they
one thing,
don't feel the same.
yeah, that's one thing I was going to comment on is this ability to walk in on someone's back is not something we want. I mean, I think people want a little privacy toward their screens.
Mhm. It's a good notion. It's a good notion, but that's one of the flexibilities about this particular system, is that because this line of what we call panels is freestanding, you can do a lot of mix and match around it. And a lot of times that can be done with just a couple of guys. We can send a couple of installers over, and it can be done overnight because we never touch the electric or the data.
When you say freestanding, what's holding these panels up? I mean, we don't want anything that's flimsy.
Right. No, you got feet that give it counterbalance, and there's weights in it
Oh,
as
I
well.
don't know about the feet. I don't think that's the kind of look that we're going for. Isn't there some way that that can be eliminated?
I wish we would have to go with a different panel system. Panels are kind of tricky in that they either require feet or they require what we call return panels, which means I add more panels to the system so that it stands up.
But we don't want panels. We don't want like a cubicle farm here, do we?
That was not the impression I got, but again, this is your space.
No, we don't want that.
Definitely not a cubicle farm. That's
Right.
just not what we're looking for. This is
I
not
mean, our
Dilbert. This is not the 80s.
yeah, I
Mhm.
mean, we have a very young and very young workforce that wants to interact with each other and wants a fun kind of modern environment to work in.
That's kind of where we're headed with low panels. But with any low panel system, you're going to need something to stabilize it. It's either going to be feet or some sort of returns in them, where this credenza would be replaced with another panel. We can stick in one there so you can kind of see what that looks like. I would add another panel like that and then shift everything around accordingly.
So Farley,
That would get
I'm
rid
a,
of the feet, but it kind of adds more barriers.
Farley, I'm a little confused. Isn't this, aren't these furniture systems like, don't they have fixed, what are you calling these things, typicals? That, you just plop them all in. I mean, you're talking about all kinds of little different parts and pieces.
They actually are made up of all little different parts and pieces. What my job is to make sure is that you have all those parts and pieces on day of install, and to make sure that when it does install, it stands up. So I'm kind of familiar with all of the rules of each of these systems so that they do what they're supposed to do. Once this is all developed, it's called a typical, and I can take it and I can copy it and I can go plop, 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 and everybody looks the same. So why don't we look at a different look now, unless I hear you have a question.
No, it just sounds like we're in a parts bin trying to put things together. Is that the goal here?
Somewhat, yeah, that's a very good way of looking at it. I used to call it adult Legos.
Okay.
It's you have what's called a kit of parts. That's what the industry calls it, and you can put them together in a bunch of different configurations. And it depends on which kit you start with. Do you start with the channel kit, or do you start with, here's a good segue, into the Vista kit? Now, Vista is a totally different look. It's very open. It's very leggy. It has this kind of shared storage, and I opened it up here where this person on this side gets a drawer on the top and a tip out bin on the bottom, and this person gets a tip out bin on the top and a drawer on the bottom. But it is very leggy with these, but it has these tea lights. It's a very sort of like library look, but it is almost like a forest of legs.
Yes, I'm not, again, the legs are, it's just not clean enough. I think, isn't there some way that you can make it look more like it's floating?
Not really. Everything has to be connected to the floor somehow. There are a couple of systems, and we're going to keep going. Let's look at I have 6 choices for you to look at. Let's keep going and see what's available out there, kind of in what we call the contract furniture world. There are, just like any kind of kit of parts, there are rules for how things go together and rules for how things stand up. So we're going to look at all that together. So this is Vista. It's really leggy. There's not a, you can turn the desks to face or you can turn the desks outside, but it's sort of limited in what it
So
does.
I think from our perspective, that's problematic because I'm not sure that there's enough of the right kind of storage in that.
Okay.
We don't have a lot of paper, but like I said, our young people, they jog, they bike, they have their workout clothes,
Mm-hmm.
they got their bike helmets. They need somewhere to put that stuff away when they come to their workspace.
Right. And we do have this long line of lockers that we've put in. And some people may use 2 because they have a lot of stuff, or some people may use 1. And as you grow, this line of lockers can grow as well. Or we could make them double high, but that would kind of block
Oh,
your light.
definitely not double high. That would just
Yeah.
so ruin the line of the space. But
Yeah.
if you remember, Maury, we talked about trying to get the storage out of the stations and into these separate areas so that it doesn't look so cluttered.
I hope our people will like that.
And we can certainly look at it differently with each systems group. This Vista, very minimalistic storage. It's a very minimalistic looking line of furniture. And what I'm hearing is that this isn't appealing to either one of you.
I don't think it's going to be the
Yeah.
solution we're looking for.
Okay. All data is good data. Even knowing what you don't like is good. The next one over here is probably the most rigid system of them all. All of these desks are linked together by this center trough. They all go up and down independently, and you can see the center screen doesn't move. The only way to do this system is facing each other, but it can allow for smaller storage or the larger storage like we saw earlier, but it is all simply together here.
So
It's definitely a nice, clean look. Do you really think that your people can adapt to working like facing in?
I think the biggest problem is this issue of somebody poking over somebody's shoulder and looking in on their screen.
Someone who, say, walked in and let
And
me
then,
grab my person and put them over here.
yeah, yeah. The lack of the ability to see who's coming towards you is problematic in that sense.
Okay, so now we've decided we don't care for this one and we don't care for this one.
I'd really like to go back and look at that option though. It's so much cleaner looking and it makes the space seem bigger too. The stations aren't that big and yet there's going to be a lot of space between them. You know, Maury, I really think that this is probably a situation where this is what they're used to. The only people that can walk up behind them are their coworkers.
Well, it's also hard for them to interact that way. You have to turn 180 degrees around. I mean, our people do come along and chit chat a lot and compare notes about the projects they're working on.
So let's look at that. If we substituted in, say, a credenza instead of this little itsy bitsy piece of storage here, let's look at putting one in there. And then all of a sudden you have a little bit more space delineation. And with a cushion here, that means that someone could come in and sit next to you and talk to you quietly at your station.
Oh, I really love where this is going. This is just so much cleaner and yeah, I think it really supports the modality and the modularity of the concepts that we had coming up with the space. What do you think, Maury? I think this is really what you want.
I think that works a lot better because the people who work immediately adjacent to each other can turn and see each other, and then their colleagues who come over from the next area can sit down and have a conversation.
And remember, I also want to remember that we have all of these 6 or 7. They're not private offices per se, but they are spaces you can reserve within Outlook. And if you need to be heads down or on the phone or have a meeting with a colleague, you can reserve one of these spaces.
Yeah. I think what's also kind of good about this is how open it is. You can see those other rooms and always be reminded that you can walk over there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, and this screen can come in glass.
We've been calling them concentration modules. Again, really focusing on the modality and modularity of your space.
And these screens, like I said, they can come in glass, they can come in fabric, they can even come in a laminate, and we can put a writable laminate on that. Although I can't see reaching across your monitors to use a whiteboard. I think either glass
so cluttered.
Glass is probably your better.
But where would people put like their pictures of their kids or the little trinkets they like to have by their desk?
It's a pretty generous desk size. It's 72 by 30. There's a lot of room on there for things right on your desk.
And there's the little shelf too in that storage section. You could, put picture frames and things like that there, so it doesn't add to the clutter of the space.
I know a couple ladies who will have lots of. I know a couple women who will have lots of shoes in that space.
Shoes seem to be a big Washington thing. There's not one single live design session I have been through where someone has not talked about shoes. I get to chalk this one off.
You were showing that work surface goes up and down. Can the occupant adjust that?
Yes, absolutely. It is 100% adjustable. Where there are 2 kinds of switches. One is just a simple paddle, and you just move the paddle up and down. Or another option is a digital switch where once you find the exact spot you like, you kind of remember that number and you just go directly to it the next time.
We have a couple people who've asked me about stand-up workstations, and I also have some wheelchair-bound employees who need a different height work surface.
Right. And then for that case, we'd probably want to use what we call the extended range, and that goes down much lower. So it'd work out really well. It's got a higher range also, but the extended range also goes nice and low. So you can adjust it however you want. And that's something I wanted to say about all of these. I have shown nothing but height adjustable workstations. So good. No matter where you're sitting, you can do that, except, and this is going to be the exception to the rule, and I threw this one in simply because it is completely different. This is just simply a table with chairs around it. We have one of these in our office, and people who are really only in the office for a couple of hours a week, they come in, they plop down, they do their thing, they leave. Is this something that appeals to your workforce, or is it something that probably won't be used?
Well, I think it'll depend on if we fill up these extra workstations. I think they'll camp in the extra ones until they're forced to use something like that.
Or we just add another 6-pack. We can say we don't do this, we add another 6-pack.
I think I'm gonna have to say that I think that's the better approach, because again, we're trying to keep the kit of parts as similar as possible so that you have that flexibility that they can become permanent stations.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, these
yeah.
would probably
But there's
never.
something appealing about this being a separate and distinct area, so that when we get to that point, the hotel people, so to speak, our guests, our day workers, know where they're going to go.
You don't think that you're going to be able to just assign them to like a station number when they come in and work it more like a hotel? You could have like a concierge.
I don't have
Uh,
somebody to do that.
I have actually, one of my clients uses a booking system, and every station is assigned a number, and they just go into Outlook and they book a station for the day. Or some of the stations you can see in the system are grayed out, and that means that they're assigned permanently to someone. So if you like, we can get that information to you later on.
Yeah, that's a good thing to look into.
Mhm.
Yeah, I
Can
really
we
think
reserve
that's
our
better.
thoughts about this area, or are we going to
Mhm.
get into a scheduling issue?
We can hold this conversation. What I'd like to do is to pick at least one of these 6-packs today to fully explore and to populate your entire plan with. And then we can hold this as a conversation for the next time. But we are on a time frame. That was a very good point to bring up, Maury. Thank you. We are on a time frame. We kind of need to narrow down to one system or maybe 2 systems today, and then our next meeting we can jiggle things more.
Well, I
So
think we seem to like the one you showed before the table.
this one.
Yeah, and
Mhm.
I'm sort of also a little intrigued by the first one, but maybe we should explore that one you were just looking at more thoroughly right now.
It's a table.
No, no, the the
The
the one with the little cushion topped storage thing. Yeah.
this one. It's a very basic system. Like I said, it's very clean because everybody's joined together. It's not a very leggy look. You have this gallery panel on the end, and like I said, we can change these screens to glass if you want. Whoa.
Oh
I guess,
dear.
yes, it turned pink. Sometimes it does that. Um,
So this also looks like it's less parts and pieces, maybe less expensive. Will this fit our budget?
It will fit your budget. Herman Miller, who is our manufacturing partner, makes actually 2 versions of this. One is called Renew Link, which is very, very sturdy and is very robust in terms of power and data management. The other one is called NeviLink, which has a better price point. It doesn't quite have all the same bells and whistles as Renew Link does, but we can definitely work this into your budget with either
So,
one of these systems.
okay, so now you raised a good technical question. How do we get power into each one of these stations? Where are the outlets, and how does the data work?
Okay, everything is carried in this what we call a trough down here, and this actually rolls open. There's a hinge down here, and this pops open. These holes are for your cords to drop through, and we can zip all those cords together in a mesh sleeve or a fabric sleeve. This station will be wired actually into the building power through a junction box that's here, and then all of the power and data is carried through this trough system until it reaches the end. And each one of these troughs can have anywhere from 1 to 4 outlets in it. And by outlets, I mean a duplex, two outlets. So it could have 8 outlets in it.
So if I got to plug something in, I got to get down on my hands and knees underneath the tabletop.
What happens most of the time is that once we put the stations in and your IT people come through and wire in your docking stations and your monitors and all of that, it's pretty much set. What we can do, and we've done this many, many places, is that we've put a tabletop outlet that moves up and down with the system. Just sits right there.
Do you not have something that can be flush with the tabletop? It sort of looks like a little,
This
1970s power,
This one comes two ways. We can cut a hole in the top and it can be mounted inside the top. Don't do that.
Oh, that's much better.
Yeah. Or it comes as a clamp mount and it just simply sits
No,
clamped
I
on the
think we
edge.
don't want to clamp.
That
We're
looks like
looking
an
for
add-on.
just a really clean line
Yeah.
in all instances.
There are definitely inset power grommets that we can put in there. They can be as small as one outlet and one USB A and C, which allows most people to plug in their phones. Or it can be much more broad than that with multiple outlets and multiple USB A's and C's.
No,
Most of the time, you just need a place to plug in your phone during the day.
Yeah, I think our people need somewhere to plug in their phone. And I was going to ask another question. What about a lamp or something on the tabletop?
You can do all of those things. There's a number of lamps you can get, lamps that clamp on, lamps that don't clamp on. This is actually the light I have in my own personal desk. It's called a tone. I'm going to make it black so that we can actually see it, or silver or something. It has a nice swing arm to it and lights up the space very, very nicely.
About that from a design standpoint.
I think that actually is a nice clean look. I really would rather see it mounted into into the desk so that it's not moving all over the place, so that we can again establish a really clean line and good repetitive modularity and modality.
But everybody has the same setup no matter which desk they sit in. So if you
Right,
end up at
right.
desk A one day and you end up at desk Z the next day, you're not hunting for things. They're all in the same place.
Yeah, and the only difference would be that, on one side of this center line, you would have a right-handed lamp, and on the other side, you would have a left-handed lamp. And, people, if they have a strong preference, can be assigned stations that work for them.
And by handedness, you mean that not necessarily the right or left-handed person, you mean where things fall on the desk.
Right, precisely.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
are you saying that you want the lamp to be just on the other side of that screen? On the other
Yes.
side?
No, so that if you look from above, the lamps would be opposite each other.
Oh, okay, I gotcha.
Yeah.
So that we
I hope
don't
that
have
works for our
this.
people if it
Yeah,
works
because we
on
don't want
display.
this like little drop spot thing happening where there's just lights willy-nilly everywhere.
Yeah.
Can I just ask about, I'm a little concerned about this panel on the end. What, you had originally shown a screen on the end, but it's kind of blah. Is there a way that can be, and I also would really love to see the glass. We're looking for kind of a Zen feeling to the space. So we weren't thinking just plain frosted glass. We had picked out, and maybe we included it in the bid documents on a note, that we prefer to have like a rice paper kind of glass.
You can always have the option to do what's called customer's own glass, and that's an excellent segue into what we call specials or exceptions. And specials are great. They give you exactly the product you want at exactly the place you want, but they do things like increase the cost and add lead time. So, and lead time is the space from the time we place the order at the factory to the time that the order leaves the factory and gets to you. Right now, it's running in between 6 and 8 weeks for most of our manufacturers. Lead times can increase the more specials you add. So if you're looking to get product quickly, we always say stick with what's standard for that product. And if not, then because there's something you really, really want and you're willing to wait a week for it, that's great. But we can always do customer's own glass. We actually partner with a couple of local glass manufacturers who are familiar with our product and know the sizes of things that we need, and they do wonderful things. I've done purple glass. And I'm really not kidding. I've done purple glass.
We don't want.
Um,
It's a little
gray,
over the top.
gray smoked glass, that kind of rice paper glass, an etched glass that has the company monogram in it. I've done all of those things. You just have to be willing to wait for them and to pay for them.
I think that's really important to the overall look of this space when we're done, Maury. I mean, we really always had a vision of that rice paper glass because it's, it provides some privacy, but it's not completely just boring, opaque glass. And it just really calls in that overall feeling of almost like a spa.
Well,
So
I
it's
remember we
relaxing.
talking about that. That was a long time ago. And
Well, yeah, it's
we've
always been in the concepts.
but we're now pushed up against the schedule, so I'm a little concerned about that.
I think it would be really a shame to lose it. It's so much a part. It's been on all of our boards, and the overall acceptance from our team meetings with your employees was so just very, very positive.
So I hear both of you. I'm going to interject here. I hear both of you. I think there's great, strong arguments to be made for each. Why don't you let me go back to one of our glass partners and see how fast they can get
That's a
us
good
glass like that and the cost,
yeah.
and we can make a better informed decision later. But since we like the glass, we know we want glass. Let's see how much it's going to add to the budget and add to the lead time. Because remember, the more that we keep it within standard product, the faster you're going to get it. Our glass manufacturer is usually pretty good and can meet our deadlines unless there are other orders ahead of ours. And
Yeah,
then we have a couple of different glass manufacturers we can use.
I think that's a good approach. Don't you agree, Maury?
Yeah, that's fine. We can do that. I do think,
And
though, that we need something along that corridor line of screen. I think you were starting to talk about that, Karen.
Right. So that's why I asked about this, because we really envisioned that end panel there being a whole piece of the rice paper glass. So it just makes it similar to how we've detailed the concentration modules with the glass on the front wall.
mm-hmm. So this end is called a gallery panel. This particular system does not allow for gallery panels that are bigger as standard product, but you can get them bigger with a channel cut in them for glass as special product. And that's going back to that same conversation. If you want a bigger gallery panel on the end, then we're going back to looking at sort of this system, which can accept glass in the top of the gallery panel.
You
So
can't mix and match them?
No, unfortunately, it's like you can't put Legos together with Tinker Toys. It's just the way it goes. They're all built to be one specific kit of parts. If you remember at the beginning of the conversation, we said, I'm going to show you 6 different kits of parts, 6 different systems.
That's
And I
silly.
wish we could mix and match them, but they don't. You can always get this as a special, but talked about specials and lead times and cost.
Well,
can we just temporarily put the regular panel there until the real one comes in?
I mean, buy this one and then also buy the other one and switch them out a couple weeks later.
yeah,
I
we would
mean,
have it. We would have it in stock for when we want to add the extra station in the future.
Yep.
yeah, that way we can really have that look that we want. And again, we need to bring this out so that we're establishing that line. So we're talking, I guess we're talking 8 packs now, but maybe we don't have to buy the storage components to start with.
Or could we just slide the 6-pack to your line and then have the extra space along the windows?
Oh, that's a great idea.
I'm gonna
and then you
say
don't have that whole who gets the window problem.
that is true. Right now, however, what you don't have here it planned for is what we call a core drill, which is a hole in the floor where the power comes out of. We had planned on the power coming from the window. If I take this group of stations, and I'm going to take it right now, and I roll it out here, then you're going to see a wire on the floor that goes all the way from here to the wall, which might be a trip hazard. Unless you want to put core drills in your construction plan. What's the average cost for a core drill now, Karen? I'm not quite sure.
Well, we're currently running about $350 per drill.
Okay. As opposed to having the junction box in the wall, which is much less, right?
Well,
Yeah, that's more like about $75.
could you just add the connecting panel there
There's
without
no
the,
panel in this system.
or whatever that the spine, whatever you call that thing that's
Yeah.
down the middle.
That comes actually as a whole piece. This is all one part number.
Oh.
Comes all as one piece.
So that
You could put the wire on the floor and then just put a rubber hump over it that you buy
that's
from.
Lovely.
No, that's totally unacceptable. It's got to be a core drill. Well, unless you think that it can fit in flat wire, but we really just don't do that very often anymore.
Yeah.
And then when we add the station there, it's a waste of that. So maybe we just have to go back and have.
These are all good decisions that you made today, and I see that our time is running out, but I think we're kind of settled on this station. So what I'd like to do for our next meeting in just a couple of days from now is I'll go ahead and populate this and I'll investigate those things that we talked about during our session, and we can then continue on our journey to get your stations worked out.
And we'll look at the budget to see about this core drill stuff.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's a good plan.
End of a live design session. I want to thank our two actors for jumping in. For those of you who didn't know, the person I talked about at the very beginning of our session today, my best friend, my mentor, the one who taught me everything I know about design, was playing the part of the dealer designer. And she certainly kept me on my toes. And her husband, who is an architect and an excellent project manager and project director in his own right, played the part of our client. So give them a round of applause. So let's talk a little bit. Things that I did and said during our session as I tried to control the narrative. If you remember, my degree is actually in therapy, and I've decided that everything about live design is therapy. I set the goals and the agenda from the start. I tabled items that weren't on the agenda. I said, okay, we're going to investigate this later. We're going to have to do this at some other point, but this is what we're focused on right now. I asked the client for their input when my A&D designer tried to control the agenda. I kept referring back to my customer. I praised decisions that people had made. I thought that was a good thing. I think it's a great thing that you did. I redirected the conversation. That's a good idea. Let's see how this plays out. Or this is one system and that's the other system, and it's like Legos and Tinker Toys. They don't talk to each other. I tried to find language that everybody remembers from. If we then statements. If we look at standard product here, that leaves more money in the budget for later. If we do custom product, then it's going to add more money and more lead time. So I let people know the ramifications of their decisions. I clarified the customer statements. I think you probably heard me say a couple of times. I think what I'm hearing you say is, these are all classic therapy statements, things that I learned when I was getting my degree in therapy. I educated the client. We talked about how certain systems don't talk to each other. I didn't have to bring up this time that commercial furniture is usually developed in 6-inch increments, although I've had to say that many times. I recently got a plan from a noted leading global A&D firm that had 4'8" panels, not 4'8" high, 4'8" wide. Yes, 4'8" wide. Figured out that they shrunk the typical so that it would fit in the space. Standard product gets you the fastest lead time and is the most cost effective. We talked about that with our customer. So all of these things kind of happened during the session. Are there things that you might have said differently or done differently?
I think, Farley, that was fantastic. And you were very, very thorough, very clear. You expressed everything to your clients, in a way that they could understand, and you worked with them towards their goals that they had for their space. And I think just very well done.
Well, thank you. Thank you. So I do want to say thank you. I want to say thank you to our great actors who accepted the roles and played them really well. So thank you, Karen and Maury. I want to say thank you to Configura for inviting me back this year. This is my third year presenting at this conference. I want to say thank you to my dealership, MOI, for continuing to support and encourage my endeavors outside of the dealership. And I want to say thank you to you for choosing to come here today and be a part of this session. There were a lot of sessions to choose from, and I'm glad you chose me. So if you want to contact me, here's my contact information. And it's been lovely having you here today.
Thank you, Farlee.
Okay, so
Thanks, Farley. Did a good job.